Good morning. Welcome back to our class series on using Fusion 360 for beginning woodworkers. Today we're going to be doing a rather simple model, continuing on from our discussion in our last session about moving back and forth through the timeline. What we're going to look at today is actually something else. We're going to look at the order of operations in modeling, so you don't have to go back and forth through time any more than absolutely necessary. Of course you can, but sometimes it makes sense to streamline the process. So we're going to get started the way we always do by creating a sketch, and we're going to sketch on the side of our plane here. We're going to be building some Western style sawhorses. So what we will start with is creating a line for the bottom. We're just going to model straight up from the bottom here. I'll turn that into a guideline by clicking and hitting X. Now it has gone dashed, and we know that that is no longer going to be cutting anything into our model. So we're going to take our line tool and draw an angled piece up, over, and back down. And if you notice, it will automatically snap to parallel. I can move it out of parallel, but as soon as I get close to it, it should snap into parallel. Now I'm going to give it some dimensions. We will click on our dimension tool and select the top and bottom lines. I'm going to say that that is going to be 34 inches up. Now you can see that that has actually pushed us over our center line. So if I drag to the left, and I drag the other to the left, you can put them back sort of where we want. Now the reason I do that is not because the mathematical modeling has a problem with where they end up. It's that Fusion will pick the best fit scenario to match the visual style of what you already have. So if you say that you want to go between this point and the center, if it's already on the other side of the center, the first one it's going to pick is the answer that will put it on the other side of the center. So you want to leave things lined up in the way that they will be as close to the model as you think you can get, then put in the dimensions, and you'll have a lot fewer problems. Okay, now we're going to be making this from dimensional lumber. So I'm going to say that this is 1.5 inches. Because we're going to be using some 2x4s, and that looks like about it. All the other things that I need to do are to put in a dimension for this angle. We're going to make that be 72 degrees, and I need a little bottom section to finish off our angle. All right, now what else do we need on the side of our sawhorses? Well, the one thing that we absolutely must have is another leg. So I'm going to say, make a line up the center, or down the center in this case, just to get it out of the way. And again, I will hit X to turn that into a guide. I will double click to select all the sides of this piece. You could select them by hand, but double clicking will get the whole thing. And I'm going to mirror that across our center line. Now, I could do all of my joinery on one side and mirror the whole thing as a body, but I find it easier to do it this way. Now, let's see. The one thing that we haven't done is defined exactly where this is going to be horizontally. And I think the easiest way to do that is to put in the center section and let it figure it out for itself. So I'm going to create this center point rectangle, and I'm going to draw a vertical board here. Now for this board, we're going to be using a 2x6. So that means that our top section is going to be 1.5 inches, and our side section is going to be 3.5 inches. Because of course a 2x6 is, a 2x6, so 5.5 inches. Yeah, a 2x6 is actually not either 2 or 6 inches. Now, if I pick this coincident tool and say that that is going to be coincident with the center line, it will put it right in the middle, and the only other dimension that I really need, when I hit dimension, is how far below, drag it below, how far below the top is this going to be? And I'm going to say that that is 2 inches below the top. Now, if I drag in these outer sections, I can say I want those to intersect so the top is exactly inset a certain distance. Now we just pick that distance. The distance on the outside is going to be a 1/2 inch. And now we can see that our boards are going to meet, and they are going to angle in and hold our center section so we don't have to worry about it. Now, we're going to put some pins through that to hold it in place. The only other thing we want is to have a brace on the bottom. So let's draw our brace. That's going to just be 2 horizontal lines going straight across here. And for our brace, again, we are going to be using some of that 2x6 we just had. So we will dimension that at exactly 5.5 inches. Now, I think that works out quite well. We just need to tell it how far from the floor we're going to be, so we will dimension that from the floor 8 inches up and hit Finish Sketch. Now, the important part is that we want the legs to be out on the sides. So that means we need to know where they go. I could calculate that, but there's a much easier way in Fusion. So if I pick the Extrude tool, and I select all the pieces of our top bar, now all I need to do is tell it that I want to go from the profile plane symmetrically, and I'm going to make this exactly 13.5 inches wide. Say New Component. And I'm going to rename that component Top Bar. We will turn the sketch back on because we're certainly not done with it yet. And I now have a 2x6 that is 27 inches wide. Now, if I select these 2 outer components here, those are the legs. If instead of going from the profile plane, I go from an object, and I will pick the end of this board, I will now say that I want those to be 3.5 inches, and I'm going to change that to be negative. And these are 2 2x4s now that are right there. Now, I don't actually want them to be right on the end. I want them to be inset 1 inch, which again, we will make negative. And that gives us a little overhang just in case, and it makes it easy to clamp something to the end if we absolutely have to. I won't give it 2 or 3 inches because that will make the thing a lot more tippy. And we'll say New Component. And I am going to call that feet. Our feet are there. Not bad. Instead of modeling our joinery and then duplicating it, I'm going to do the same thing that I did before and just duplicate it now, and we will duplicate the joinery separately. It's generally the process that I follow. I know it's a little more efficient to model individual components and their joinery and then flip them across the center, but I really don't think it makes that much difference. Okay, now if I take this brace piece, some people like to have these as flat. I like to do them standing up. I think it works out a little better. What I need to do is I need to know where the middle of these stretchers is. So before we do that, I'm going to use a function we haven't used a whole lot of, which is midplane. I'll create a new midplane, and that means I'm creating a plane that is exactly halfway between 2 already existing sketching planes or objects. So I'm just going to pick the 2 outside sides of this leg, and when I create that, it gives me exactly the center point. So if I choose this extrude function, and I extrude not from the profile plane, but from an object, I can pick that midplane. I can say I want it to be symmetrical. And because this is a 2x6, that means from the center, it's going to be exactly 3/4 of an inch. And we'll say New Component. And I will say OK. So that means that our brace is now there. We have one side, and we can turn that plane off. If I open the construction folder and get rid of it, we'll get rid of our sketch as well because we are now finally finished with it. So we have our sawhorse there. There's only one thing that we need to do now, and that is to add a little more detail on the joinery. Now, we could put in a brace that goes across from leg to leg, but we're actually going to put a brace going across from brace to brace. So in terms of the joinery that we're going to do integral mortise and tenon, which I know is a little complex for a basic sawhorse, but I think it works. We'll call this short brace. We're going to turn off our feet, and we are going to sketch, but we're not going to sketch on the end of this board. Remember, this board is angled, so if we sketch a tenon on here, by default the tenon is going to be going perpendicular to the angle of our plane. But if we sketch on the axis and instead hit project and project the outside of our brace, it's now going to be perpendicular to the ground instead of perpendicular to the face of the object. So I've just drawn a little center line here, and that will allow me to pick the center. You can see this little triangle shows up, and I'm going to draw a center point rectangle. I'll zoom in and take a look. Now I'll give it some dimensions. We're going to have that be exactly 1 inch wide, and we're going to make it 4 inches tall. And that's simple. We'll just end right there. I will hit extrude. I can't pick it, as you can see, but if I turn off the brace, I can click on it and turn the brace back on. Now, instead of our profile plane, we're going to start from the object, which is the outside edge of our brace. And if I turn on our feet, instead of going anywhere else, we're going to go straight through, and we're going to go to the outside edge of our leg. I will say new body, and I will hit OK. Now, you can see that that is there when we mouse over it. Of course, it's conflicting with the leg a little bit, but that's all right. Now, if I say that I want to mirror it, we need to say bodies, which has come up by default, which is nice. I will pick that body, and I will mirror it across the center. And you can see in the outline, it's going to the other side. Now I will hit this Combine tool, turn off Keep Tools, make sure we're joining that centerpiece of the brace with the other two. I'll just rotate around and pick the other one. And now if we hit OK, we can see, turn off the feet, this is our short brace. And that is the piece we need. Now, I'm going to copy that short brace across to the other side by using the mirror tool again. Mirror it, select the center point, and hit OK. Now we have a brace with the tenons on it already on the other side. We need to cut a few holes in our legs for that, but I'm not going to worry about that exactly at the moment. The only thing I need to do now is create the brace that goes between them. So I will sketch. These ones are actually flat, so I can just use one of these. I will draw a line through the center, turn it into a guideline by clicking and hitting X. And again, I will start with a center point rectangle. Now our center point rectangle is going to go the entire height, and we're going to create another one that doesn't go the entire height. See why in a second. So this is also going to be a 2x6. So it means that our width is going to be exactly 1.5. It already knows the height because it's the same height as the other board. Now, our little tenon that we're going to be cutting on the end is going to be 5 inches tall. Now let's make it 4 inches tall. And it is going to be we'll make it 3/4 of an inch wide to make sure that we have lots of shoulder space, and hit finish. Now, if I select that whole piece, both the inside and the outside, I can go from the inside of our leg to the inside of the other leg, and we will say new component. And hit OK. Now that gives us our brace. We just need to cut in our tenon. So I will turn back on the sketch and select the smaller piece, which is our tenon. And that is going to go from here to, I'll turn off the short brace, and we'll go to the edge. And instead of joining, because that will create the piece, but we'll have to do it again on the other side, I'm going to say new body. I'll turn the sketch off and mirror our tenon across the center line. Now I will combine, and we'll combine our main piece with both tenons that we've created and hit OK. And not keeping the Keep Tools left on, again, it has disappeared from our bodies folder up here, and it is now part of that as a right and left integral tenon. Right, so this is our long brace. That's pretty good. So if I turn on our short braces, and I say combine the short brace with the long brace, and that's going to be cut with the tools kept. I will right-click and hit repeat, and I will cut the short brace on the other side with the long brace. We'll just do that a couple of more times. Cut the tall foot with our short brace. We'll do it for that foot and this foot. And we'll cut the other 2 feet with the other short brace. Now again, we could have done this in a way that actually made it easier by doing it first and mirroring it after. But I don't think it's really worth all that effort, because I think this is visually easier to see. Now, if you wanted, you could secure these using screws through the side, using dowels, using anything you want, really. From my perspective, I would just glue them in. If you want to pin them with something, you can go for it, and that's totally fine. The only thing that I would actually secure in this is to secure this top piece. So we're going to do that. We are going to sketch on this top piece. We'll scroll back out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit P for project and select one of our legs. We don't need both of them. One is fine. So I'm going to draw across the bottom of our leg, and from the midpoint we're going to go up. Now, I'm going to subdivide those further by drawing a line, and I will hit X to turn those into guidelines. Now, this piece, we want it to actually be coincident with the top. And I think everything else has, no? All right, so we need to select this end and make it coincident with the side, and now they are all black. So if I take our circle and I draw on the midpoint a circle that is, D for dimension, 3/4, and I mirror that across the center line that we just drew, and hit OK. I can hit Finish Sketch, and I will select those 2. Turn the feet off because we can't get inside. All right, turn the feet back on, and I am going to say this goes from the outside end of 1 foot, and I'll spin around to the outside edge of the other foot. Now, it doesn't like this, and this is a common known problem. So the way to get around that is to go from the profile pane in both directions. So we're going to one object, the outside foot. We're going to go to the other object, and that gives us the same thing. It's just going in both directions. And we'll say New Component and hit OK. And we will say Top Bar Pins. Now, those are going to go through both feet and the top bar. You'd just cut them off flush. You wouldn't actually make them that size. I mean, unless you really wanted to. But it would be so much easier to just cut them at the end. I'm going to say mirror. Whoops, not that. Those 2 pieces. I'm going to mirror them across the center line, if I can find the axis. Yes. And hit OK. And now we have 4 of those pins. If I go to Combine, and I combine that top bar with all 4 of these, we can select them in the tree. It's a little easier. And now I can repeat that same combine and combine the 4 pins with each of our 4 legs. You can see where the efficiency comes from if you do this in the right order, but doing it 4 times, it's not too bad, and I think this procedure actually makes it easier to visualize. when you do it step by step, more like the way you actually build it. Now, when you're doing something like modeling a box with 50 drawers in it, you don't want to take this approach. You want to map it out and do them in the order that makes more sense. I've got an extra character in here. We'll just clean that up. Turn the pins off. And I should be able to go in and see that there are holes cut all the way through. Do we not have holes cut all the way through? We don't have holes cut all the way through. Oh, I've missed one. My bad. Cut that last one with these 4 bodies. And now we have holes that go all the way through. We'll turn the pins back on, put the pins actually in. Now, if you wanted, you could go through and do pins holding these other things on. You would go from the outside edges of our 2x6s and from the outside edges of our 2x4s. Now, pins holding the 2x6s together, not really going to be all that useful because the thing is not moving anyway. You could definitely do it if you wanted to, but I don't think I would bother. You could do the ones on the outsides of the stretchers here. I don't think it's necessary, but let's just toss a couple of pins in there to show you how you would do it if you wanted to. So, our tenon is coming through in here, so we're going to hit P for project and project the tenon. I'm going to draw a center line through. Remember, center line doesn't necessarily have to be horizontal or vertical. And I'm going to create 2 circles. We'll make a circle here. And I'm going to draw a center point line through here. No, that's probably not the best way to do it, because this is on an angle. The mirroring is not going to be quite as easy. So I won't go into how you would mirror. I'll just draw it there. We're going to make these, again, 3/4 inch dowels. So I will say equals, and I will make the 2 equal. We'll drag them into about their right place. I will hit dimension. From the center point of the circle to the end of the line is going to be exactly 1 1/8 inches. I'm going to do the same thing from the bottom. And instead of typing it, I will just click and duplicate it. Now we have our pin. And I will say I want it to go through. I will scroll over so we can get close enough to it to click it. 1. It doesn't want to let us get close enough to click the circle, so we will get in nice and close and click the circle. Sometimes overlapping things make it a little difficult. We're going to go through to the other side of our leg, go right through, and we'll say new body. Now we'll say new component because we're actually going to keep those. I usually just model things as new bodies when they're going to disappear. So we'll say leg pins. Now, if I copy those, I'll open this folder, close the other one just to make it easier. I'll select both, and I'll mirror them across the center. I'll repeat that and mirror all 4, like we've already done many times now, across the center. Now we have our pins. The only thing we have to do is, whoops. Did I just undo that? I don't think so. No, sorry, clicked on the wrong thing with the mouse. So if I now combine 1 leg with all our pins, remember, I'm doing it with all the pins because it means I don't have to figure out which pins go through which leg. If they don't actually intersect, it ignores the cut. If they do intersect, it cuts using them. So that means that if I just pick all the ones that could potentially do it in a folder, whatever actually intersects will cut, and whatever doesn't intersect will simply not make any difference. And now, if we look at that, and we turn off our leg pins, we should see that we can see all the way through on both sides here, and that our pins are holding those pieces together quite nicely. Now, if you wanted to do it on these ones, I guess you could do it right through from the top to the bottom, but it would be a very, very long pin. And because that top piece is being braced in, I don't think it's really all that necessary. Right, so that is our Western sawhorse here. We're not even going to bother to make that look nicer. The only thing that you might want to do with this is you might want to add a flat stretcher across the top instead of this 2x6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to modify it to make that possible. So I will save this, and what we're going to do is we're going to save this as Western Sawhorses Live with flat top. We'll just hit save. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into our first sketch. I'm going to hit Edit Sketch, and I'm going to change this from being 5.5 to mean that this line, this top line, is going to be in the same plane as this other line here. Now, if I hit Finish Sketch, that top piece will now be flat. All right? We see that? And our same pins that we already drew are going all the way through it. Now, I could make another sketch, but I'm actually going to just edit the sketch we already have because it pretty much has everything in place the way I want it to be. I'm going to select a center point rectangle, and I'm going to start drawing it up here. Draw in a place where it's not going to conflict with anything. It doesn't have to be the right place. It just has to be vaguely in the right area. I will say that the line of the top and the line of the bottom of that piece we just drew are going to be in the same plane. I will say that the center is going to be coincident with the center line we drew down here. I'm going to say that this dimension here is going to be 1.5 inches, and that it is going to be 5.5 inches wide, and that will give us, again, one of our 2x6s. And I will say Finish Sketch. Now, if I say Extrude, and I extrude that thing that we just drew, what I want to do is we are going to go, whoops, not symmetric, 2 sides to 1 side, scroll around to Object, other side, and we will say New Component. And we will give that a name, Flat Surface, because that's what that is, a flat surface for us to be sawing on. I'll turn that sketch off again, and you can see that we now have a flat surface on top, which is exactly what we wanted. Now, the only thing that we want to do is brace that in place. So what I will do is I will draw on the top. I will draw a center line right down the middle. Click on it and hit X to turn that into not a line we're going to use, make it a guide. And I will draw a circle in the middle. Hit D for dimension, and say that is again going to be one of our 3/4 inch dowels. Okay, if I hit Finish Sketch, I will hit the Extrude tool, pick it, and I will go straight through to the object, the bottom of our 2x6. It's going to be a long dowel, but that's okay. New body. Now, if I have a body and I want to turn it into a component, I just open the Bodies folder, create components from Bodies. I will close this one to get it out of the way. And this is our flat surface pins. We're not just going to use one, we're going to use a few, because I figure if you're going to drill a hole, you might as well drill a few. Click on our rectangular pattern tool, pick our, oh, it's selecting faces. That's why it looks so weird. Pick our body, choose a direction, which is going to be right and left. That is our red axis down here. And I'm going to drag it over. Now I actually want there to be 5 of them. They're going to go in a symmetric direction. And we will make them go all the way out to 8 inches. We'll say OK. Open the folder so we can access them more easily. And I will cut through our top beam with all 5. And I will repeat that combine and cut through our bottom beam with those same 5. We'll hit OK. And now you can see that we have those dowels all the way through. Of course, you wouldn't have to measure them out that carefully. But if you were going to show this sawhorse to someone, say a potential client, the fact that they are nicely laid out and exactly trimmed flush will probably be impressive to someone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit A for appearance. We're going to make this a little more obvious. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick, instead of just using the maple that we built this thing from, I'm going to pick this dark semi-gloss maple stain, which will more accurately reflect the way the lines will look. And I am going to apply that by dragging it over to each of our pins. Now, I'm not suggesting in any stretch of the imagination that you stain your pins dark, but they are end grain, and it seems a bit easier to see them in real life than it does in the modeling software. So I have changed the color of them so that you can see where all the exposed joinery will show up. And there you have it, a nice Western sawhorse modeled up in only a few minutes. And we've done two different options of it, one with the flat top for surface sawing, and the other one with the top that is much narrower for holding up pieces generally if you want to do other work on them to make clamping a bit simpler. Okay, well, I hope that has been useful to you. We'll be back again shortly with another one of these live stream class videos. And if you have any questions, please stick them in the comments below, or go over to our website where you will be able to contact us. If you are looking for individual private classes, please know we also offer those one-to-one or one-to-group, both in person and virtually. So inquire anytime you like, and we are happy to oblige. If you have liked, please click on the like button. If you haven't, of course, you can click a dislike, but please leave us a comment down below and tell us what it was that you wanted us to change to make these videos better. If you want to see more live classes, you can subscribe and ring the bell. And if you could do us the favor of sharing these classes to any social media or forums and with the friends that you think might be interested in learning more about Fusion 360, woodworking, and design. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.